Today we'll discuss about the T cells. T cells in the cell mediated immunity, right? And cell mediated immunity. Basically, these T cells originate from bone marrow. They originate in bone marrow, but like in the early embryonic stage, embryonic stage, they transfer in thymus. They transfer in thymus, and there they get mature and get ready. There they get mature and get ready to fight against the pathogen. So what the T cells basically originate from in the bone marrow, and like after some time in the embryonic stage they transfer into the thymus, basically into the thymus gland, right? Basically this is a gland which is located on our sternum, right? Sternum is a bone between your rib cage, so it is located there. So it gets transferred in the thymus gland, where it gets matured and get ready to fight with the pathogen, right? So basically let's discuss the receptors on the T cells, right? Receptors on T cells. Basically we have two types of receptor. First is basically CD8, which stands for cluster of differentiation. Cluster of differentiation 8. Basically it is a glycoprotein. CD8 is a glycoprotein, and basically it works as a co-receptor. Now what is basically co-receptor? Basically consider that this is a T cell. This is a T cell, and this is its receptor. It is TCR, like T cell receptor. There is another receptor which is known as co-receptor. Basically it is a helping receptor of the T cell, like helping receptor of the of T cell receptor. Like this is a T cell receptor, and it has co-receptor as well, like the helping receptor. This CD8, basically it is present on cytotoxic T cells. It is present on the cytotoxic T cells plus on the suppressor T cells. We will talk about the we will talk about the classification of T cells on the basis of functioning as well in this video. But before that you should look on these. Basically this CD8 receptor is present on these, and they basically recognize the MHC class 1. They recognize MHC class 1, this CD8. Now we have another type of basically this class CD receptor, which is CD4, cluster of differentiation 4, right? Basically it is also a co-receptor, and it is basically present on helper T cells. It is present on the helper T cells, and basically it recognizes the MHC class 2. It recognizes MHC class 2, right? And if we talk about another, like if we talk about the memory T cells, basically these memory T cells have both the receptors CD8 and CD4 as well, but it depends on the antigen, which antigen has attacked on the immune system, so they will recognize that. So it depends upon antigen. So memory T cells have both CD4 and CD8 as well. The helper T cells have CD4, right? So now let's talk about the classification of T cells on the basis of function, right? Classification of T cells on basis of functioning, right? First of all, we have cytotoxic cytotoxic T cells. Basically, these cytotoxic T cells release cytotoxin. They release certain cytotoxin, which basically triggers DNA destruction. That trigger basically DNA destruction of pathogen. Right? They release certain cytotoxins that basically trigger the DNA destruction of the pathogen, as well as they also trigger the perforin. Basically, perforin is a protein which creates hole in the cell wall. It creates holes in cell wall. So basically, these cytotoxic T cells release cytotoxins, which triggers DNA destruction of the pathogen. Plus, it also triggers the secretion of the perforin, which is a complementary protein. We have talked about this in our previous videos as well. And basically, it creates the holes in a cell wall. So this was cytotoxic T cells. Second we have is basically suppressor T cells. Now, when the activity of T cells, when the pathogen has been killed and we need to stop the activity of T cells, these suppressor T cells release certain suppressor molecules in order to stop the activity of the T cells. In order to stop activity of T cells, right? These suppressor T cells. Then we have, which is basically helper T cells. Helper T cells. Basically, these helper T cells are activated. They are activated by interleukin 1, and when they get activated, they release interleukin 2. They basically release the interleukin 2, which basically increases their proliferation, plus this interleukin 2 also activates the B lymphocytes and activates lymphocytes. Now, what is this? Basically, these helper T cells are activated by interleukin 1. We have talked about this thing in my previous video as well. So these are basically activated by interleukin 1, and when they get activated, they release interleukin 2. The production of interleukin 2 increases their proliferation. We can say it increases their replication, as well as it also activates the B lymphocytes. Right. Now, fourth we have memory T cells. Basically, these memory T cells, for example, when a pathogen enters, this is a pathogen has entered, and now the T helper cell has worked on it. Now, basically, this memory T cells will record this. For example, there is a pathogen, it has entered, and the T helper cell has created antigen and all those things in order to kill this pathogen, and it got successful. Then there were memory T cells. They record this, which antibodies were used and all that, right? When this pathogen will again enter, then this memory T cells have recorded this thing in the memory, that which antibodies were produced and all the system, right? Now this memory T cells will be converted into the memory T cells, convert themselves into the T helper cells, right? So basically, these memory T cells convert themselves into the T helper cells. So this was the basically work of memory T cells. So I hope this classification of T cells and the T cell mediated immunity is clear to you. If you guys have any kind of questions, you can ask me in the comment section. I would really love to answer you guys.